Hey guys, welcome to Jerry's Live. As always, I'm your host, Amy Gardner-Dean. Today we are doing Color Theory 401. Where do we go from here? We've done multiple episodes on color theory. In fact, I might have skipped to 401. It might really should be 301, Katie. I'm just realizing that. I think we've done... Have we done 3 now? Okay, well... No, you're right. Oh, I see the list right here.
Yeah, because we had to skip one and go back and do it, remember?
We did. So, yes. So we have, if you're playing along at home, we've been using this same list from beginning to end with all of our color theory. You can find it by either typing in JL114. That'll show the whole list of the products that we're using. You can type in JL88, JL97, and JL106. So with JL8, we're going to review very quickly. But with JL88, that was our first one. We talked about basic mixing, ticks. I haven't had enough coffee. I think that's the problem. Basic tips and tricks for color theory. The second one, 201, we did how to talk the talk. We learned about a lot of the lingo that's used when you're dealing with color theory, what values, hues, tints, shades, and tones are. The third one, we did introducing color schemes and color psychology. So that was the one I was having problems pulling out of my head. It's when we start doing all these multiple episodes where we're building each time and it's about 2 months out, it starts getting a little confusing as to which one we're on. So what we're going to do is a really quick review and kind of break down the things that we've learned, and then kind of how do you take all this information and start applying it realistically in your own work. We've got a really awesome group on our Jerry's Live Facebook group. If you're not a member, you can go into groups on Facebook. You do have to be a Facebook member to do this. Type in Jerry's Live, pull that up. You have to answer the question when you submit it. Otherwise, it just counts you as a robot until that's answered, and you won't be able to be approved. But we've got over 3,000 members, which is really awesome. People share work, people comment on people's work. Some people just kind of very quietly sit back and kind of watch everything go by and see kind of where everybody's at and all the different levels. And some people are just starting to get comfortable enough where they're starting to post things, which there should never be any like intimidation for wanting to post, because everybody is it's a really caring, supportive group. Now, that being said, in seeing work that I see people producing, it's all different levels, and people have color theory background and people don't. Where do you go after you have these episodes and get this education on this? How can you start if you don't have a background with color theory and know very much about color psychology? How can you start realistically applying this information in your own work day to day? So we're going to talk about that at the end. Then as the episode is concluding on YouTube and Facebook, which Katie, by the way, is doing YouTube today. She's multitasking, running the camera and doing YouTube because Frida is out of town. We got Amanda on Facebook. They're going to put up a link of some color games that I encourage everybody to try. They're fun. You kind of learn, oh, wow, I really do have a better eye for color. Or, hey, maybe I need to be paying a little bit more attention. Some of the games are a little addictive and fun, and then there's just some color information to kind of at the end of things that you can apply. There's even a game I found that's an app that you can put on your phone to play when maybe you don't have drawing tools with you and you're sitting at the doctor. At least you can be practicing your color theory and your color knowledge, okay? It just makes you better as an artist. So, where do we go from here? We talked about primary colors, remember? Primary colors, everybody knows from being a kid, the red, yellow, and blue. They cannot be made from mixing other colors. You can't take green and orange and expect to get a primary, okay? Secondary is made from mixing the primaries. First run, and then the tertiary are made from mixing that primary and the secondary. We covered that in JL88. We also have templates in that where we go over it, and it's really awesome, a good way to kind of see it with overlays. So then we go into the color schemes in painting. We talk about complementary colors. Complementary colors are just that, looking across the color wheel, they are the actual complement. Okay, so think about Christmas, red and green, yellow and violet, blue and orange. Those are the strongest because they're the highest contrast in a color scheme, but they're also the ones that, if you don't have a really good control of your color, can be a little too glaring and a little too in your face. So you would want to tone those down. A split complementary are ones that you go across the color wheel. Like if I was picking red and green, I would pick green as my kind of primary of those two, and then a red violet and a red orange, so that it's like the strength, but it's a little softer, okay? So if you're not sure kind of how to play with the color without it getting dark and muddy, instead of that complementary, choose a split complementary. Analogous color schemes, those are 3 to 4, sometimes even 5 colors side by side. This is where, when we talked about color psychology, that color can come into play. If it's a painting that you want really strong, we talked about the strength in reds, that red is a power color, right? So you could do kind of pick a red violet to even maybe a yellow orange would be your analogous color scheme. You could play that up with them really saturated if you wanted to portray anger, you know, being just very mad. Even if you wanted to go into like madness as far as psychosis, you could play into the orange and yellows. Those are going to be colors that are more associated with that. You want something very relaxed, very calming, choose your cooler colors. We talked about warm colors and cool colors. Warm colors associated with the sun and heat are obviously going to be hot colors, water, greens, and things like that. Blues, those are going to be associated with cool colors. Those can be used to, you know, denote calmness. They can be used even to, if you want to play into a mood of depression, of sadness, you can use those colors. So use color schemes to help you even portray emotion in your work. Now, triadic colors, they're colors evenly spaced around the color wheel, like your primaries are a triadic color scheme. We showed examples of this. They're the hardest to harmonize. You can't really use them in equal amounts, so you need to soften them. So you can see that the red was played up and the yellow and blue were much softer in that, but that's a very basic triadic color scheme. Then we talked about hues, shades, tints, and tones, right? A hue is your pure color. So hue would just be this red right out of the tube. Then you go to make a shade. It would be the red with black. In whatever amounts you choose, that's still considered a shade because it's a straight hue with black. Then you've got a tint, which is this color and white. Then you've got a tone. A tone means it's the hue with gray. So it's the combination of white and black with that red. Now, it doesn't have to be 50-50. It can be a very dark gray. It can be a very light gray. You can use your value finder to determine how light or dark you want to make it. As long as it's gray with that hue, regardless of whether it's up here in the really light values, whether it's down here in the really dark values, it is going to be considered a tone. All right. Then we discussed warm and cool colors. If there is one takeaway that that you could really use in your own work, it was when we were talking about mixing colors, how you will have warm and cool colors. Just because yellow is yellow doesn't mean that it's the same yellow. You can have a cool yellow, which is going to have more green in it, like a lemon yellow. You can have a really warm yellow that's bordering on more of like a sunflower yellow. It looks a little bit more orange, right? That is going to be a temperature change. So if I'm using both of these yellows and I'm wanting to mix colors, if I want to mix a hotter color, a red, you know, something, a nice orange, I'm going to err on the side of using that warm yellow because that's going to be a very successful yellow. If I use that cool yellow that's got that hint of green in it, it can start making your color look muddy. This would be what you would want to reserve for making really nice quality greens. If you ever have had mixing issues with greens, look Go back, look at your yellows, look at what you were mixing. Was your blue more of an ultramarine, which tends to be more of kind of a purplish blue? Was it a lighter blue like a cyan blue? Was it really deep like a phthalo blue? Was it blue or was it green, the green shade of the phthalo? So looking at your colors and being very objective, this is where it's going to be a little bit harder if you've got say mild color blindness or something like that. You may want to talk to friends. You may want to have them help you. They have a good handle on color. You may want to have them help you identify your colors. There's all this extra room here on tubes. Write cool or warm, right, with a marker on there so that you know which is which. Even if you're just tend to grab and not think, it might be good to sit down one day with a cup of coffee and a Sharpie. Write a W for warm, write a C for cool, just so in a pinch, you're working really fast, you don't grab the wrong color, okay? So those are things that you want to be aware of. Those are things that very quickly, almost overnight, using that kind of temperature color smart is going to help you when you are mixing color. All right, so then we discussed that if you're having problems, well, I had to think about this. If you're having problems with that, to go back into dealing with those colors and the temperature, not all swatches on the tubes are actually painted swatches, especially in acrylics. Most of them are just a computer approximation. Actually take a little bit of paint and paint it out and make a swatch and label it for yourself. Then once it's dry, you'll be able to tell whether it is a cool or warm color. And because acrylics also can sometimes have some color shift, right? When they're wet, just because that acrylic medium tends to be a little bit whitish and the color tends to look a little bit darker when it dries. That's the other reason why it's really good to swatch those if you're trying to determine what are warm and cool colors. Okay? Pigments. We discussed why pigments are an important thing to know when you're mixing. When I post this in the group, it's going to be the actual show notes from the show, which are going to be this review that we had from all of this. So you'll actually have the notes and kind of what I went over from the show with some of the things taken out, like when I'm showing examples, I've taken that out for the work. Now, the website www.artiscreation.com is a really good site that should be your best friend if you're serious about being an artist. Especially if, like, say Charvin, it's one of our house brands. I've got the very basic colors here, but there's what, 200 and I don't even know how many acrylics, right, Katie? In the oils, there's in the neighborhood of 300 colors, right? So
There's a lot.
those colors aren't unique colors that don't exist anywhere else in the world. If this is a brand that's for you, which any brand that you're interested in using for the majority of your time, or that say you're buying new colors, you're getting into the brand, you want to know more, this is where you can save yourself so much pocket change and reduce the redundancies in the colors that you have in your house. Always look at it. This is ultramarine blue. Ultramarine blue is PB, pigment blue, 29, okay? If this was a Charvin oil, there may be all these beautiful light blues that I see in the color chart for Charvin. And I'm like, oh, I really want to buy that blue. And I want to buy that blue. And look, there's this beautiful mid blue there as well. Look at those colors. What are the pigment numbers? Because a lot of times you see 3 or 4 colors that you're like so deeply attracted to. And then you look at them on their chart. What's the pigment? PB29 is the first one in that. Maybe it's PB29 and PW4, which is titanium white. All they have done is taken this little tube, put it in, well, not this tube, but they've taken that pigment, they've put it in with titanium white in a percentage that, how do you find out? You would test and mix yourself and come up with this tube of blue that you're dying to have. Yes, if you've got unlimited funds, knock yourself out and go and buy however many colors you want. But this is a way to do it where you can go, hey, with a little practice, I can mix this color. I can save my purchases on maybe a mix that's very complex that has 3, 4, 5 different pigments in it that may be really difficult for me to get that exact color, or that's a different blue that's got a pigment number unlike anything else that I've already got in my paint box. So I know that's a color that's only going to look like that, okay? That's also a good way if you're going from one brand to another brand. Like, say you use Winsor Newton's Winsor Blue. That sounds like something only you could get from Winsor Newton, right? Theoretically, no. Look at the pigment numbers in that. I don't remember if it's phthalo blue. I think it is a phthalo blue, okay? Look at that, then say, okay, so they're out of that, but this is the pigment number. Go to this artist creation website, type that number in, or look under the blues and scroll down and look at that pigment. It may even have other brands, and sometimes it says the brand names or the initials of those brands, of other colors that are using that pigment, that then you can go to their color chart and you can check, and you might find something absolutely the same that you can buy right now. You can go ahead and keep painting. You don't have to wait for that color to come in, okay? That is why that website is incredibly important. The other reason why that website is incredibly important is it talks about the light fastness. If you have paints and maybe they don't have light fastness ratings on them, or that part's rubbed off, you can go and actually check the average light fastness, where it's rubbed off. Or just paints on it, or something like that. You can go and check the light fastness. The average light fastness, I will say, of that pigment is going to change in different mediums like oil, acrylic, or watercolor. Some, but a fugitive pigment in one is probably going to be about as fugitive in another. So that's something that can give you that information. Also, sometimes it'll say stuff like, this is a junk pigment, you know, or this is very, you know, you'll be like, why is this tube of blue this expensive? It's going to explain in there what the history of some of those pigments are very briefly, and you'll know that it's something that's only mined in one place in the world, and maybe there's environmental restrictions on it now, or safe mining practices have had to become involved. So those are things that this website can help you with, that can help educate you and make you a better artist, but also save you money, okay? That's as important as color theory. Okay, so now the other thing that this is important about, looking at your tubes of paint. If you're using this color, which I'm worth just saying, these are single pigment colors, but let's say you've got these two colors, and every time you mix them, it is not making violet. It looks like mud. It's kind of brownish and goopy. Start looking at what are the pigments in this. If this one has 3 pigments and this one has 2 pigments, 4 pigments, 5 pigments, we discussed in one of the episodes, when you've got a pigment, they're all this, if this is a single pigment, it's the same size pigment particles. So it's going to reflect the light at the same wave pattern, the same direction, that's going to make your eye read this as red. Every pigment reflects light differently. So the more pigments you put together, the more, instead of something coming back at this nice kind of gentle shooting out at you, it's going bing, bong, bing, bing, bong, bing, bong, like a bunch of pinballs. That makes the viewer read that as muddy. So that's another thing that's good to know about. That's why single pigment colors are something that a lot of artists talk about as being important. Okay? And that's why if you've got 2 pigments in this, 3 pigments in this, and then you're making adding gray to that, then suddenly you've got 7, 8, 9 pigments, depending on what you've got a mix of. It's going to just start looking really muddy and hard to control, okay? So a good thing to know. All right. So if that's the case, or, say you don't want to use gray, say you've run out of black, say you're trying not to use black. There's artists that do it. Artists that do it that a lot of times are really, really good at controlling color. What types of things can you use instead that can take some of the sizzle out of a really bright color like this, but not make it too drab, dull, you know, things like that. You don't always have to add white. You don't always have to add black. The quickest way I found to take the heat out of a color is add a little bit of a similar earth tone. What does that mean? So this is a red. What earth tone would be the most like it? Either a red oxide or something like a burnt sienna. I'm not saying add these 50-50. I'm saying add a little color. It'll take some of the color out of it. So I want to experiment to show you guys. Don't you think that would be the best way to see what I'm talking about? Katie, with the overhead, is this kind of right in here? Perfect. All right.
Should I zoom a little more for you?
Yeah, go ahead. I just don't want to push the paints off the table. That'll work. I'll just stay, yeah. Boop-a-doo-boo. Here we go. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So what I'm going to do is we're going to put out a few colors, okay? This is a cadmium deep genuine. Red deep genuine. So that means it's a nice opaque color because cadmiums tend to run on the opaque side. So that would be a nice deeper color. Let's take a cadmium yellow genuine, shall we? So we're gonna take a nice cad yellow here. And then let's take, we'll do the primary. Oh, if I can get it open.
Don't do that at home, kids.
No, no. Okay. So we've got our primary colors here, right? So if I'm going to knock these down, first we're going to put a swatch over here of each of these. So we've got the nice, just so we can see what that red looks like on a white canvas. All right. I'm going to be an Ophelia for a minute. Don't judge. And don't tell her. Don't tell her I did that. Because I always tell her, don't leave your brushes in there.
Oh, she does every time.
Oh no, she always does. And then sometimes she'll send me a picture later and be like, oh, what can I do with these overnight?
Nothing?
Throw them in the garbage.
Buy a new one?
All right, and then let's take this one. You can see the cyan's a much more transparent color. Okay. Now, so what we're going to do is we're going to put a little burnt sienna with this because that's a reddish, a natural reddish color. It's PR101, which means what? Pigment?
Red.
Red, yeah, okay. All right, so then we've got...
I know these from that one episode.
Yeah, then we've got yellow. I've got a yellow ochre and a raw sienna that are both PY42. They look not the same, but then they're PY42, right? So we got one that's more heat treated, one that's not more heat treated. So let's go with this lighter one to kind of tone that yellow down, right? And then with the blue, I'm going to take, even though this is a red, it's funny, PR101 with burnt sienna and burnt umber. But look how much browner that is. Okay, now you could go with that, you could go like if you had a sepia, if you had, you know, even I don't know, anything that's kind of a darker color, we're going to just use that to knock down. All right. So I've got my red. We're going to take some of that. We're going to take just a smidge of this burnt sienna. See how that takes some of the heat out of that color? Instead of having to take black to darken it, which can change the color very dramatically, we've darkened it just slightly. Still reads as a red, right? But it takes some of the intensity out of that.
Hey, Boo. What's the blue that you just put down?
It's cyan.
Okay. I missed it because I was solving a problem.
No, that's okay. It is a PB15. All right, so yellow. Take a little bit of that ochre. Now with the cadmium colors, cadmium, because it's opaque, is very strong, right? So just remember that. If you're using a transparent color, you do not want to add as much of that color that you're going to use as a neutralizer, because that is going to, like if you're using a Hansa yellow or something like that. See how this tones that down? a lot. It doesn't look like the color. In fact, let's take these colors so you can see just these colors straight, not on the gray. Right? Here's our sienna. And then our blue. Get my paper towels and pull the excess water out of this. Now, why is it important that we're doing this? Why are we swatching this? It's really good to play ahead of time with colors so that you know you can have some mode of prediction about how those colors are going to react together when you work with them. You definitely don't need to squirt out as much as I'm putting out, obviously, but see, that's much more transparent, so I used just a little bit of brown. See how that almost makes these gray, looking like you've added gray to it, right? But instead of 2 pigments and added to that color, where it really takes a lot of kind of that, to me, happiness out of the color. I'm gonna say, you've helped kind of subdue them and make them not quite as carnival bright, right? And made a much kind of more kind of neutral, natural color with it. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then these are obviously the earth tones. So in varying amounts, we've taken that color and we've changed it just a little bit. Now, Amanda and I were talking earlier, and this is something, the reason we're doing this is to discuss why you would want to do this. And I'm going to keep the overhead on. I'm going to move this just because she's worked so hard on these color swatches. I do not want to get them all gooey.
Yes, please.
Okay. So Amanda has been doing lettering for forever. Amanda is a very artistic person. Amanda, you just don't have as much like of a fine art background, right?
Right.
Okay, Amanda went beyond her scope of comfort and did a really nice watercolor house for one of her friends the other day. Bricks, they were amazing, and it was in watercolor.
It was stressful, yeah.
But do you feel like that it would have been as successful if you did not play with color constantly?
Oh, no.
I mean, I can't believe how quickly you did that. I'm going to just say.
No, it wouldn't have been as, if I wasn't such a nerd about swatching things.
No, but that's awesome. So, and that's the point that I'm trying to drive home is that without the fine art background, you were still able to take something because you've done your practice work, you've done your homework, and that made it so that without you having to have that background, practice made perfect for it, right? Okay, so this is Derwent ink tints. So we're looking at colored pencils. It's just as important to swatch those. We talk about that all the time. Slide it up. I'm just going to lose the... Actually, let's do this.
Oh, turn sideways.
Okay. Well, we can see it better without my thing. Okay. So see how she did just the pencil loose itself and then did it with the watercolor, right?
We also talk about that lettering up top.
I know. Yeah, well, yeah, that's... Anybody who watches the show knows what Amanda's aware of, yes. But, I mean, she's got this beautiful... All of the number of the pencils there, or the color number is there. So now, if she took this the step further, then it would be the different mixtures of what makes what layering. This is a lot of pencils, so this was a lot to do just with that. Then she did this with a Mayberry Blue set of watercolors that she has to make sure each of those pans, she knows reliably if she's going to use this color, this is what it's going to look like straight off the pan. Then she's doing this with a Lucas 1862 set that she's got. Both watercolors, both pans, but look that there is a pretty significant difference, not only in how each of those companies interprets that color, but just the different way that it spreads on the exact same paper, right? We talk about that all the time. Even with papers and substrates and stuff, they don't match. So she's doing her homework ahead of time to see how these things work. Now this is Now, which one was this? Was this done with the Mayberry? Which set was this done with?
That is not a set.
Okay.
It's the 3 primaries from M. Graham,
Okay.
and then a bunch of Daniel Smith, and then like 1 or 2 other ones. They're on the back.
Okay. So straight off the bat, now you know that without meeting Amanda ever personally, she's a watercolor hoarder.
Oh man.
No, that's okay.
You can't really work here without being a little.
No, I agree. I do that with oil paints. I had 300 plus tubes at one point, which was like, I don't ever use this much. Why do I have this? But it just happens because you start getting addicted to color. So these are the colors themselves straight out of the watercolor wash. She's got those diagonally. Then what you've done is each one you've mixed that with that color,
With
the next color.
every other color.
With every other color going down this, okay, to see what she can get out of with this color and this color together. What happens? What does she get? So she's made this really awesome color chart to see what the performance of only this handful of colors, 14 colors in all, does when it's combined with other colors.
And if you think that took 5 ever, you're right.
Yeah, 5 ever. I like that. So, case in point, playing with the color, doing this. Now, we discussed at the beginning of the show, people are going to want to be resistant to this. Why do I have to do this? Why? Okay, or I get the question a lot of times from people, well, okay, so I don't want to waste my good oil paints or acrylic paints, insert paint brand X here. So can I use student grade ones or whatever to do my color practice mixing and then go back to my other ones? Okay, this is why this is not a cost-effective thing to do. You gotta go buy all the student colors, and even though they're student colors, it's still not cheap, right? Then the pigmentation in them is going to possibly be hues, where in one brand, what one pigment would be, it might be 3 different colors trying to simulate the performance and look of that color. Then in student grade pigments, it's not the same amount of pigment in each thing. So a titanium white, because titanium is a super inexpensive pigment, is going to be so heavy loaded with pigment in that student grade. In a more expensive pigment, it's going to be very light by comparison. So suddenly this titanium white packs an even bigger punch than titanium white already does with that student grade color. Mixing those together is only going to teach you about that paint that you are using at that current time, which knowledge is not going to transfer over to the real paint that you usually use. Okay? So, as annoying and awful as that is, and how you may feel like you're wasting, I hear this all the time from people doing this show. And I want to tell them 2 things. Number 1, I squirt out a lot of paint on this show to save time and effort so that I'm not having to stop and keep putting more paint out. B, I'm not taking your paint. I'm not using my own paint. We have lots of paint here. We can get more. So it's not being intentionally wasteful. It's just making sure we've got the materials to cover it. Now you can do paint mixing without being intentionally wasteful, with just taking a little bit of brush stroke at a time and mixing your color, swatching all your colors to see what they look like, to determine, are they a warmer color of this color? Are they cooler? You know, we did the show on pigments. That's something that you should watch. Can somebody check to see which show that was? It's on that entire list that we post at the beginning of at the top of the episode. It's always pinned with the episodes that we've done ahead of time. There is a chronological one. There is also one by subject matter, and I think that's one of the education ones. But if you guys can, if you don't have time to find it, that's fine. It's in that list, so you guys can open it up. It's a Google document. You can open it up and check. But we talk about cobalt blue. We did cobalt blue in all the oils. We did lemon yellow in all the watercolors. We did quinacridone in all the acrylics.
What was it called?
It was the show about, it was just about, maybe it was the student grade, student versus professional grade paint. What's the difference? It was probably, it wasn't 2017, was it? Or was it when we moved over here? Maybe it was.
We were over here.
Okay. Yeah, but we moved over after a few episodes.
That's it.
Okay, so okay.
Yeah.
So which one is it?
Episode 20.
Okay. So in a land far, far away, JL20 covers that. Lemon yellow doesn't mean it's a pigment that's a PY lemon yellow, right? Pigment yellow, it means that it's whatever the manufacturer wants to come up with to make a lemony looking yellow, which is going to perform very differently by brand because half the time they're nowhere near the same, is what we learned from that episode. The quinacridone was half the time. Did we do a quinacridone magenta, I want to say, maybe, or quinacridone red. It was one of the two. Those were night and day different all across the board in the acrylics. In the blues, we found that most of the people that had a straight up cobalt used one particular pigment, except Sennelier. They used a completely different cobalt blue pigment, and it looked different. It was much more violety. So those are the things that you need to know how your paint's going to perform. You will waste more paint just going, okay, well, this is a red, not to mention that it's really a magenta looking red, and this is a blue, so if I mix these together, surely I'm going to get a violet. No, you may not. So that's where that's very important. So do we have any questions right now as we get ready to go into the next thing? We're going to show how you can mix just little bits of paint with little bits of paint to get your colors. No questions, huh?
Well, I'm sure in about 30 seconds when the feed
Okay.
catches up.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Well, I didn't know if you had some kind
I've
of
been mesmerized.
standing by. All right. Okay, so get your questions in. I'm going to continue on, but please stop me whenever you get the chance if you get questions. So we're going to talk about, besides the need for you guys to do your own color swatching and some color mixing, we're going to talk about some color charts that can help you do just that. Okay, all through this color theory kind of melee, we have had the little Magic Palette color matching guide that's perfect for plein air. I think we've shown this on the plein air episode. We've shown it on a bunch of different stuff. It's got windows, number one, which doesn't have anything to do with color theory, but it's darn handy if you're out doing plein air, where you can actually, if I was looking for an orange and kind of, I could hold that up and find which orange, number one, fit a tree that I might be painting back here, see through the viewfinder to actually see what matches the most closely, but then I know, okay, this color is actually the Pantone of what real cadmium orange in most brands looks like. Then you go up, it's starting to add your black to it. You go down, it's starting to add your white to it. Okay? So it gives you an idea of, I've got this color, but I can change it and alter it by doing my additions of dark and light. All right? For all these colors, this set has shows you how to mix 324 colors using 18 popular tube paint colors. These are colors most people have in their painting kit. If you don't, you may want to, because really they are the main colors for mixing most colors that you would ever need.
Makes your life much easier.
Well, and you know, that's the one bad thing about buying a set of paint from a manufacturer is you're at the mercy of possibly their twist on it. They may be, you know, like, and not to point any fingers at Winsor Newton, but it's just the easiest, quickest example for me to pluck out. Something that says Winsor yellow is not telling you what kind of yellow it is. Okay? Cadmium yellow, that's telling you what kind of yellow it is. So Winsor yellow is clearly not cadmium because it's not labeled, but what is it? And how do you know whether it's going to be a cool yellow or a warm yellow? So when a manufacturer has weirdly named, you know, either by their own branding or some other name, and they're putting it in a set of paint for you to buy, you know, it says this set contains 8 colors. Woohoo! You know, and it's all the colors that you need for mixing. Is it, though? Does it have a warm and a, you know, a cool red? warm and a cool yellow, warm and a cool blue? Does it have some earth tones to help you knock your colors back a little bit like we've done here? Does it have white? Does it have black? There's a lot of colors, color sets that don't have black at all. And then, to further confuse the mess out of you, we did an episode on white and black, and we swatched them. And guess what we found? There's warm and cool blacks. Aren't there, Katie?
Yeah, there
warm
are.
and cool blacks. There's also
There's red blacks, there's blue blacks.
there's also
brown
some
blacks,
some
there's-
whites that tend to be
Yeah.
a little bluish, that tend to be very cool. There's some whites that look a lot warmer. Okay? So just because it's one white doesn't, or just because it says black, you know, Charvin has this beautiful color, it's not this, but it's called Intense Black. What does that mean? It's actually a very blue black.
Yeah.
It's a very blue black. It reminds me of a very dark Payne's gray. But if it's in mass tone where it's very thick and you pull it across with a lot of thickness to the color and leave it, it's a pretty jet black. If you actually are thinning it and using it for a wash, you know, you're not a wash, but you're doing glazing with it, it can look really bluish. So those are things that you need to be aware of too. Yes.
I have a question along that lines.
Yes.
Mary was asking about, when we were talking about the phthalo blues,
Yes.
she was asking if red shade always means warm and green shade always means cooler.
Yes, it should. That's a great question, Mary. That is a company that is aware of that, and they're dummy proofing you knowing which, because phthalo blue is just a phthalo blue, right? It's a what, PB15? Okay, so there's PB15. That's our cyan. Is PB15. It's called cyan, but it's made out of a phthalo pigment. Then you've got PB15
What?
3.
3, 5.
That is our blue-green shade. We've got a PB15 1. That is our red shade. Not always going to be the same by different manufacturers, but that's their way of labeling it to help you make a better buying decision. Okay, that's why color charts, that's why a lot of people want that color chart from a manufacturer before they buy the paint. So they can see in a painted swatch if something's going to be warmer or cooler.
And I don't know if I missed this, but a lot of our website, our web pages have the color chart on there. If
Yes,
you download it.
they should. They've been working on it. So if you're on a web page when you're buying paint from any company, they're going to have a chart there. Usually it's under all the pictures and the information. With ours, you've got your photos, you've got your information off here to the right, and under it, it will say, you know, Winsor Newton's color chart, or, you know, their artist oil chart, or this or that, or Charvin's chart. Then that should come up. Now, I will say some of those, the writing is about this big, and you're going to have to enlarge it. And not all the manufacturers give us a really high resolution image of those charts. So sometimes you may have to go and actually Google that somewhere else, or pull it off the manufacturer's page, potentially. If
Watercolor tubes.
Yes. Oh no, it's like reading Sanskrit that's written for mites. It's not easy to, you know, to tell at all. So look at those before if you're not sure about buying paint, and you're not buying it in person. Okay. So, all right. So we've got this. It's a good way for you to actually take the colors, use the color, add a little bit of white, add a little bit of black, see what's going to happen to them, add a little bit of earth tones. All right. With oils, this is a little easier because they can stay open, obviously, longer than acrylic.
Will you put the wheel out under so they can see?
Yes. I mean, it's very, very pretty. And it's hard to spread it all the way out. All right. So then we've got, if you can switch out to the main view for just a second to see the Big Magic palette color mixing guide. And you know, in all the years I had color wheels, color wheel tells me nothing. It's just, to me, it just looks like Pantone, and it doesn't say brands, it says color names, which color names are not the same through manufacturers. So color wheels, I hate them. These are the most practical working examples of color mixing that exist. Now they make a smaller desk version that does not have as many colors, but this has given you the ability to go, wow, I like this kind of violety gray. What is this? It's Indian red Then you go down here and cobalt teal. Make that beautiful kind of cool gray color. How easy is that? You didn't just waste a bunch of paint. Now, once you mix that 1 or 2 times, you are gonna get, that's, for some reason it's so ingrained in your head because we're such visual people that you'll be able to go back and do that. There's this Holbein color that I absolutely love that is this, it's very similar to that kind of violety gray that I figured out how to make by looking at what the pigments were in it and then making it with a different brand, and so I didn't have to buy it anymore.
Those are great when you're stuck. Like you're trying to
they're
make
fantastic.
something and you're like, why isn't this working?
Well, or you're looking for something that's, you know,
Or
you
inspiration,
need
yeah.
something that's kind of, especially for portraits. You can look at the shadow on the person and then go, oh my gosh, this color right here is almost the exact same shadow I need. Payne's Gray and Burnt Umber make this kind of weirdish green color.
I love
Okay?
the shadow color.
Something you would never think about if you've not had the time to sit and practice mixing your colors. All right, so any other questions, knock them out, just bring them in. I'm gonna take a couple colors and we're gonna try doing this where we add a little bit of black to see what happens to them. We add a little bit of white.
Joyce was asking why not use complementary colors instead of earth colors to reduce the intensity of them.
Because complementary colors a lot of times make nice browns. Okay.
Make mud.
Yes. I mean, you can add just a smidgen. That's okay. So let's do that. We've got a Cad Lemon Yellow. Actually, let's take the French Primary Yellow because that's probably the most kind of in between. And then I've got a medium violet. Okay. This isn't really super warm or super cool in my opinion. It's kind of a mid yellow. This medium violet, it's pretty violet for the most part. So let's take that. See, that's not really blue. It's not really red in my opinion. So let's take those and we're gonna okay. So we're gonna take yellow, we're gonna take a touch of that. Look how that makes it, that touch, which it's because it's a more opaque yellow, but see how that really changes it. That's not, it's a cooler version of that raw sienna almost. So let's take more violet and just a pinch of the yellow and we'll see how that changes it. So that knocks it down some, but to me it makes it look kind of muddy. It's much more brown than violet. Okay, so let's put the colors next to them so you can see. See how that little bit of violet really, that's maybe too much yellow in there. That little bit of violet in there really altered it. See how much just a touch really kind of
Knocks it down.
overly does it? So, okay, so that's the case. Let's try adding a little bit of the burnt umber to the violet and a little bit of the yellow ochre, okay? Now, probably with the burnt umber, instead of a burnt umber, because that's a pigment red, I might take like a sepia or something that's a more of a neutral brown. If it wasn't too, it depends on the brand of the sepia. Okay, so we're going to take the violet. We're going to add just that little touch of brown like we did the yellow. There's not really going to be a whole lot of difference in it. So that can alter it some. It just makes it almost just a little darker in value is all. So the way Amanda swatched those, if you took your oil colors and you just got a nice tube of white and a tube of black, or even just some earth tones and played, take a canvas paper like this, make a, okay, see that little bit of yellow ochre, see how that changed that? It's not quite as lemony now, it's much more of a deep sunflower. See how those the earth tones are a little bit better at changing it just enough, right? Can you see that? It's just not, doesn't have that same light intensity of it where the complement really browned them out. which if that's what you're looking for, fantastic, you know? Okay, pick a color, Katie. Pick a color and we'll do the,
Halo.
so you want one that's got a lot of punch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yay, punch!
Yeah.
Halo green.
Phthalo grey. This is the color I hate the most.
Purple.
Shocker.
Huh?
Shocker, that's what I picked.
Yeah, I hate the phthalos. Now, which it's funny, this is where you see color shift. See how the label is much darker?
Mm-hmm.
That's because it's a kind of semi-transparent. It's not as, it's right a little bit darker. Yes.
Amy, the color mixing guide does not have pigment numbers on it, does it? It just has names.
No, because it's common brand names, okay? Trade names, like Indian yellow, cadmium orange, cobalt teal, Payne's gray, phthalo emerald, sap green. Just it's trade names because it's not like we discussed. Not everybody uses the same pigment, especially when you start looking at student colors.
But you
Okay.
could use the artist creation website to.
Yes, to
Narrow it down for
predetermine.
yourself.
Yes. Okay, so see, this is a nice transparent color. So here's our straight color. In fact, I'm going to take a marker. We're going to put a star next to this so we know that that's our straight color. And then we're going to go each direction. Okay? Now, because this is a transparent, we don't need as much to get, even though it's phthalo, to get the result. So this would be where, obviously I'm putting out more because I'm just used to doing that for the show, but where's it? Black, got a carbon black. Now carbon black is a PBK 7, so it's kind of a, to me, a bluish black. All right, so we're gonna take just a smidge of white compared to that phthalo. You can see it's starting to look a little mintier, right? Take more white. Now, if you don't want to use like this much paint out, you can just have the tube open and swipe your brush, clean brush across the top of it, okay? Have one brush for each, or a palette knife and just kind of scoop some out. See, a little bit more white. It's still, you gotta add a lot more white because that phthalo has got so much power to it. Add a significant amount of white. Now see how much phthalo I'm adding to this? It still packs a lot of wallop. That's why I don't like phthalos. It's not. And because different brands have different intensities, it's not. There's only a couple brands of phthalo that I really like. That have
So
phthalo.
you don't like phthalos because they pack that much punch.
Because it makes it harder to guesstimate the performance depending on brand. Okay, if I stick with one brand, it's fine. But
Yeah.
some because phthalos is a man-made chemical organic pigment. Okay, so it's made in a lab. It's hard to control. Different brands are going to make them very differently, right? Where a cadmium,
It's like sapphires.
yes. Which, and in cadmium, it can change some too, even though it might be cadmium red medium, you know. Some brands, it may be darker than others because, cadmiums, your metals are heat treated. So it can be very different. All right, so see what the difference is with that there? All right, so now we're going to go the opposite direction. I'm just going to add a touch of that black, just a touch. Just to see what happens with it. Because even though it's phthalo, it's kind of transparent. So see, it's starting to have a little bit of effect on it, right? Okay, so we're going to add a little bit more of the black. So how many of these should you do?
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah, this is where I would say, okay, so I'm not going to paint with 300 colors anymore. I would pick the ones I really use the most.
Well, it should be noted with Charbon, they're made to paint plein air and not to mix.
Right.
So that's their reasoning behind it. Although you can make all the colors,
Right.
they're made for you
Well,
to be painting
or-
when it's, you know,
Or
you're
even
losing
not
light
plain
for
air,
doing-
just for convenience of, you know, you have, the reason
consistency.
I've enjoyed them is if I've got 3 hours to knock out a project for photography tomorrow to have what looks like a finished painting in there, guess what I don't want to take time to do? Color mixing takes a buttload of time, guys. Just a huge, ridiculous amount of time. So if I've got colors where it's already been lightened, that makes my job so much easier. I can just paint like the wind. Now see how much darker that got real fast? All of a sudden that black's really starting to make a big difference. Add just a touch more. And the more you mix, the more you can really evaluate the percentages of what you're putting in your mixture to get that. See, that's getting close to black. Let's put a swatch of the black up here so you can see. Okay, now we're going to put a swatch of the white up here so you can really see how much that's still very, very... Even if I took all that white and put it in that, it wouldn't change a lot. See how far that still is off of that white, even though we were adding more and more and more white. Even though titanium white is a pretty punch-packing white, look how that's still a kind of about a 4.5 of a gray value, you know?
What was that pigment number for that, Daylam?
It is PG7. Pigment green 7. And that's something that, like sap green, there's no set formula for sap green. Some people will put browns in it and other stuff. Some people will use PG7 and just alter it some. That's why this stuff is really important to know, especially if you're switching from brand to brand. Super duper important. Then getting home, you're used to using this one particular color that just does what you need it to do, and then you break it out and guess what? Ta-da! It doesn't work.
Or if one of your brands discontinues a color.
Yes.
I've had that happen to people.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Nothing will make you more mad.
Right. Oh, most definitely. I've helped lots of people in customer service with that. All right. So is there anything that anybody kind of... anything from all these episodes put together that you guys have still just have a burning question about? I mean, it's fine to leave questions in on YouTube. It's fine to leave questions on Facebook. I'll come back in probably 3 weeks or so, go through them and answer them. I'm still kind of backlogged on some of the other episodes, but it's fine to ask it now. If you've got us here, obviously, I'm here. So
Jim was asking if there's somewhere he can find whether a primary color is warm, cool, or neutral. If there's like a guide for that, or if it's just
there is not. It's you've got to learn to trust your own eyes. And I mean, some people's color visions tweak a little more than others. If you've got, again, if you've got issues with color blindness, no matter how mild to how severe, you may want to have somebody else that you trust help you, or an instructor. Maybe that would actually probably be better. Just because you trust somebody doesn't mean they've got a good color eye. Find somebody that actually is a painting instructor that can help you kind of label what's going to be better so it's easier for you to mix colors. Or you can always work in monochromatic. It's, you know, you can tell gray values.
Does the number next to the pigment name, so like you said PR101 earlier, what does it have to do with, or is that just how they classified that specific
It's just how they've given it a number so that they know that is going to be closer to these than this. Like the cadmiums, scarlet cadmium.
It's a nickname
is-
for their chemical names. You don't have to
Yes.
remember the long.
It's just as they've been found, they attach a number to it, right? So that it's a cataloged way for like chemists and stuff like that to know this mineral, this element, this, you know, metal makes this particular color or a variation of that. Yeah, it's so confusing when you first start doing it, and then the more you reference that website, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. after the episode that we cataloged all those blues,
Yes.
yellows, and magentas.
Yes, the student versus professional
Yeah.
grade paint, even though we did not have this set up, we don't have the overhead cameras. We're filming just kind of down and dirty with a cell phone, I think, still at that point. Had we even gone to the iPad at that point?
I don't even think I was part of the
So,
show.
no, you weren't.
So I think it was just the two
So we
of us.
definitely
Yeah,
only
it
had
was-
a cell phone.
And we
No, we had,
swatched-
Mary was helping us then.
Mary,
Yeah,
We swatched every
Yes.
lemon yellow and watercolor that we carry.
Yep.
Every cobalt blue
Yep,
in oil, and I think every magenta in acrylic.
yes.
To show the differences between
Yes.
them.
So that's a really great episode to watch. Even if you speed it up and just watch it, just to see the difference in colors, it's going to be,
Just
it's
check the screenshot.
it's eye-opening. It's like a religious experience that's like, I guess, uplifting, and at the same time it kind of makes you,
Mind blowing. It's that movie.
it's just like, oh gosh,
Yeah.
this is that
There
much.
were-
Yeah,
There were lots and lots from Amy and I. There were lots and lots of. Oh, look at that one.
yeah, and oh my god,
That was when I was just a fan.
yeah. So, all right. So I'm gonna put this up on Jerry's group. You guys have attached this. You can go ahead and attach the show notes now to the end, and you can access that. That accesses my Google Drive. So it's got the fun stuff. The list is at the very end, and it's in violet and pink, so it's easy to find. There is an X-Rite color challenge and Hue test, which is mind-blowing. There's a color matching game that I struggled with, but that I kept trying to go back to and was like, I'm gonna beat this. Yes, Amanda.
I just wanted you to know I got 100% on that.
Oh, on the Hue one? Yeah, that one was awesome. The other one where it was the color matching game, when it's got the triad and you have to like spin it and get it in closer and further out, that started getting where I was just like, I can't look at this color and then figure this color, too much. But then there's a puzzle game for color called Blendoku, and I was so impressed by that, I'm gonna go put it on my phone.
There's also one called I Love Hue.
I love
You're gonna-
Hue.
That's
Okay.
my favorite one. I
All
play
right.
it every day.
All right, so I will look at that and I'll put that back on. I'll put that on the list when I get back on Monday. So, so anyway, all right. Well, hopefully these have given you guys some education on color. It's not meant to overwhelm, and I'm so sorry because I know that this does. This stuff overwhelms me. This was not what we learned in school. This went above and beyond, and using the kind of natural tones and pigments, and this is stuff that becomes compiled knowledge for you. The more you swatch and the more you experiment and the more you take notes, put it on stuff. You can just use old watercolor paper even. You don't have to put this kind of stuff on canvas pads even. You can just put gesso on old watercolor paper. You can put even gesso on a heavy mixed media paper and do your acrylics and oil swatching on that. You could do watercolor swatching on just, you're using mixed media paper, right, Amanda? It's not even cotton.
Those?
Yeah, it's not even the
it's
cotton watercolor paper.
It's the visual journal, but I think it is watercolor paper.
Okay. Well, but it's still not, this isn't 140-pound
Oh.
paper at all. So, I mean, so you're just looking to see what this color looks like when you start combining things, you start doing hues and tints and shades and experimenting, and take notes. Keep a pen or pencil nearby where you can kind of keep taking notes on what you like and what combinations you invent that you can't live without. And that will really, really help your ability as a painter to grow and become more experienced. And then when you apply those color theory, techniques that we talked about, you apply those color schemes, you apply the color psychology, it all like comes together in this just beautiful happenstance of artistry. Okay, so I'll go put this up in group. I am going to be out of town till Monday. I will add the game that Amanda has told us about into this on Monday, so it will still be in there. You can go back in and access it for that game. It's called I Love Hue, so you could even Google it if you just have to get to it before then. So, all right. Well, thank you guys. Hopefully this has given you some color IQ. And next week it's charcoal.
Oh, it's gonna be a mess.
Maybe. Maybe it will, and maybe it will. No. We're doing all things charcoal pencils, charcoal sticks, some kind of tips and tricks on that, from very basic skills to kind of some stuff that in researching it that I actually learned and was really excited about, and I can't wait to get the charcoal in my hands again to do it. So, you guys take care. We'll see you next week. Bye. Amanda, these are beautiful.
I love her swatch.